All right. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. And a very good evening I bid to all of my fellow viewers who is watching today's video. Now, before we move on to our main topic of the video, as we can see in front of the screen, let me briefly introduce myself first. Now, as the presenter for this case study, I am Muhammad Haris Hanafi bin Muhammad Johari, and I am from Tesl D, and I am also a option of PISMP Tesl June intake 2023 until 2028. Now, regarding of the screen, yes, I'm going to present my case study that I did for the previous assessment task for TSLB 3923 regarding children and languages. Now, what I did back then is I have to do a case study or an analysis study for the impact of bilingualism and multilingualism on child language learning, which I have conducted an interview for a child to gather information regarding his bilingualism and multilingualism. Now, for today's assessment task, I am needed to record an oral presentation to explain and elaborate what I have gathered from the case study into an oral presentation. Now, let us move on to the next topic. All right, now before we move on to whatever there is that I'm going to be explaining in my oral presentation, let me first introduce shortly about what I am going to talk about. Now, I have made these table of contents regarding of what I am going to speak of. Now, the first one, of course, in any oral presentation, we need introduction. So I will be explaining a little bit about bilingualism and multilingualism in language learning. And then also, I will be explaining the background of the child that I have interviewed for this case analysis, and also will be the methodology, which is the ways of how I basically conducted this case interview, on how I gathered my information, what kind of sources did I use, and also I will be explaining briefly about bilingualism and multilingualism, and also I will go in depth of these two topics within the child. Now, what I emphasize here is four things, just I have mentioned before, which is bilingualism and multilingualism. The second one is I will be emphasizing on the language content of language learning. The third one is the learner context of language learning. And the last one is the learning context of language learning. And then I will be summarizing all of these contents in one form of conclusion, which will be presented shortly after this. So now we have moved on to the first content, which is, of course, the opening ceremony of today's case study analysis, the introduction. Now, as you can see on the right side of the slide, it is quote unquote by me of briefly what is language acquisition. Now, language acquisition explains how the human language ability develops in contact with its surroundings and the rest of human cognition, which offers a fresh perspective on the complex structure of the ability. Now, as we know, bilingualism and multilingualism actually play a crucial role in shaping one's language acquisition, especially among children and adolescents. Now, I believe that every child has successfully learned a first language within a few years, and doing so without the need of formal instruction. And as a result of an infant's exposure to the language, language acquisition occurs or oftenly occurs spontaneously. But the difference here is how an infant or a child progresses through their language development. Now, I also believe that every child will acquire their native language, or in the educational jargon, we call it as L1. And this L1, it is the starting point for language acquisition, but a child may also acquire their second language, or in educational jargon, we call it as L2. Or if a child has better cognitive development level than other children, they will perhaps learn more two languages. as they progress through holistic growth. Now, surely languages have their own ways of working in terms of phonetically, morphologically, lexically, and even grammatically. Now, all of these will create more than one language acquisition because you need to master all of these in terms. Now, as a child acquires knowledge regarding language, generally they would apply it into daily conversations, depending on the situation and also the language usage. But be it whether bilingualism or even multilingualism, the question here is, does it even affect the child's cognitive process of the language that they have learned? So, this is the reason why I conduct this case study. This case study that I have just conducted will analyze the impact of bilingualism and multilingualism on a child's language learning in terms of the acquisition among children, the language, the learner, and even in the learning context of the language learning itself. All right, so now we have moved on to the second content of today's case study analysis, which is the background of the child, or simply said, the participant's data analysis. Now, a 12-year-old participated in a 1 hour and 15-minute online interview has been done using Google Meet. Now, the participant is my own brother, which is Muhammad Ryan Rashdan bin Muhammad Johari, and he resides in a rural portion of Perak, Malaysia, which is my village. Now, Ryan talked about his experiences studying and using English and Malay during his conversations, whether it will be with his teachers, with his friends, with his parents, or even with me. And also, Ryan attends in Sekolah Kebangsaan Lunggung, which is a rural school, and he is also well known among his peers and instructors for his exceptional fluency in English. Now, according to his response, and also to the questionnaire that I have actually asked him, so in the 30th minute interval, in the moment that I interviewed him, he stated that he tends to speak English, which is his L2 acquisition, more frequently despite being a Malaysian by birth. Now, at the 30th minute interval, he stated that because my family or our family, we are born from Australian family members. So basically, we will speak more English than Malay. So when this occurs, we have to speak more English. So at a very young age, he has already developed his L2 acquisition efficiently. Now, our parents were also approached for background information regarding Ryan's exposure to both language because Ryan is blood related to the person conducting this case study, which is me. And as it turns out, Ryan mostly learned his English as a second language from our own mother. Now he mimics and listens to her conversations to understand the fundamentals of English grammar. However, because of his poor L2 competence, the father or our father actually did not play a significant role in Ryan's acquisition. Now, since English is the primary language spoken in the family home, Ryan primarily uses his L2 when speaking, writing, listening, and reading, which is the basic four skills. And he rarely uses his native Malaysian language. So, in addition, Ryan uses media channels, including cartoons, TV series, social media like YouTube and TikTok, and even games to actually improve his L2 proficiency. Now, Ryan claimed, actually, in the 15th minute interval, where he not only picks up English naturally, but also refines it in school as he picks up new vocabularies. Now, in the video, I remembered he stated that he feels like by going to school, he will learn new words and new vocabularies And when he does that, or when he do so, he will tend to use those new informations in his daily conversations. So that is the explanation for the background of the child. So we move on to the next content. So next we move on to the methodology, which is the ways of how I conducted my case study. Now, for research approach, I chose to make a qualitative research, which is a flexible, in-depth approach that explores human experiences, perceptions, and behaviors using non-numerical data like interviews, observations, and focus groups to understand complex social phenomena. Now, a qualitative research methodology was used in this case to obtain detailed information about Ryan's multilingual language development. Now, the following techniques, including participant selection, were applied, where Ryan was specifically chosen because of his fluency in both English and Malay. Now, his age and multilingual upbringing fit the study's goal of assessing how multilingualism or bilingualism affects language acquisition. The next step is or was data collection, which involved interviewing Ryan for 1 hour and 15 minutes in a semi structured manner about how he uses language at home, at school, and in social situations. Narayan was able to express his experiences, opinions, and difficulties in both languages by using open ended questions. Now, also, parental input comes next. Along with offering further background on Ryan's early language exposure, home language policies, and their support system, this interview also highlights the importance of having brief conversations with his parents in order to evaluate his cognitive flexibility and multilingual competency. Nonverbal clues and code switching tendencies were closely examined during the interview. Now, the interview was transcribed and also subjected to a theme analysis following of the data analysis. Now, important themes were found, such as bilingual identity, contextual language use, and even language exposure. In order to give genuine examples of Ryan's linguistic experiences, exact quotes were also taken out. And most significantly, Ryan's parent gave their informed consent prior to data collection, allowing ethical considerations to be implemented in this case study. So finally, we have reached to the main first content for today's case study analysis, which is bilingualism and multilingualism. But here we are only emphasizing on bilingualism because this case study is relating with Ryan's bilingualism skills proficiency in speaking Malay and English language. Now, as a brief, bilingualism is the proficiency to speak within two languages, and multilingualism is the proficiency to speak more than two languages, or three languages, or even several languages in different countries, different cities, or even in different communities. Now, in this case study that I have conducted, uh, I can surely and guarantee that I can identify Ryan as a bilingualism child due to his proficiency emphasis only on Malay language and English language only. Now, as you can see at the left side of the slide, which is on the blue colored table, which is a part of the questionnaire that I've interviewed Ryan, where it asked that what language can you speak or understand and when do you use them. Now, when I interviewed him, he stated that he can only speak in Malaysian language and just English language, because the interview that we conducted, he only spoke Malay and English language and not more than that. So, by emphasizing on bilingualism can actually benefit kids' perceptual and cognitive development, especially in the areas of cognitive flexibility, operational memory, and attention management. Now, compared to monolingual kids, Dual language learners might also possess superior planning and organizing abilities, such as task switching and inhibitory control. This can be proved by the findings, where Ryan stated that he excels English in many fields, especially in his academics. Now, I actually have a transcription of the interview. So I actually asked him, when we know how to speak, we also know how to write. So I actually asked him, are you good at speaking and also writing? And he was quite doubting as he said, yes, I guess you could say I'm good at writing. But then I realized that I actually examined his examination papers during in his school. So his score in his English test were quite high, which is 19 out of 90 out of 100. So that alone emphasizes that his academic success suggests strong cognitive and language skill. Now, this supports the idea that multilingual students perform exceptionally well on cognitive tests. Also, Ryan's ability to express himself clearly and perform well academically in English raises the possibility that his multilingual education has contributed to his sophisticated language and also cognitive skills. So next, we move on to the second content of the case study analysis, which is the language context of language learning. Now, one of the popular teaching strategies in ESL classrooms or English as secondary language classrooms is the situational language instruction. Now, this approach aims to establish genuine situations for students to connect new materials to real life situations, which thus enhances language acquisition. Now, Ryan actually learned basic English from TV shows, for example, like SpongeBob SquarePants. And as you can see at the left side of the slide, it is a purple colored table where it shows an excerpt of how Ryan's fluency in understanding English. Now, the question that I actually interviewed him was, what helped you learn English? Like, does school teaches you English, or does school actually provokes you to learn English, or does movies provokes you, or does games actually encourage you to learn more English, or talking to friends? And he stated that by watching TV shows and by watching cartoons, and he refines it at school. So with the known knowledge that he has when he learns it at home, he will refine it at school. So practicing his language skill in class and using them in conversation shows how tying what they learn or what he learned in the classroom to real world situations improves their ability to understand and use the language. So, by relating new material to existing knowledge and with authentic context, the creation of authentic scenarios improves second language acquisition. Now, also, social interaction is an essential for language acquisition and other aspects of cognitive development. Now, for example, the ZPD or zone of proximal development emphasizes how crucial it is to scaffold language learning with the help of more experienced peers or adults. Now, as you can see also at the left side of the slide, it is a dialogue between me and him where I actually asked him, how often do you actually hear people around you speak in English? And since both of us came from a family that is quite frequently speaking in English, he said because at home with the people in the household, which is my mom, me, and my brothers, so we speak a lot of English. And also, I actually asked him too. So, does learning English in school is as important as learning English at home? And actually, where do you use your English at school? And he stated that yes, he did use, and he stated it is also important. So mainly he uses his English during assembly. So he was the master of ceremony or the MC at his school. So whenever there's like an assembly, he will usually be the MC and he will conduct the ceremony in English. Now, Ryan's involvement as an MC in assemblies um, shows how regular social interaction in English rich settings improve his social proficiency. So this is in line with the ZPD since Ryan gains by conversing with more experienced speakers and using his language skills in authentic contexts. So now we move on to the learner context of language learning. Now, considering the elements that can affect learners' motivation, methods, and successes, such as their background goals, learning environment, and the particular language learning circumstances. Now, the learner's reaction supports the viewpoint of this pink colored table regarding the ways in which motivation and successes are influenced by background, goals, learning environment, and also particular language learning situations. Now, being a fluent English speaker gives Ryan a positive self concept regarding language acquisition, which may increase his motivation. Now, as you can see in the pink colored table, I actually asked Ryan, do you think of yourself as someone who is good at learning languages? I also asked him to elaborate why or why not. And he confidently spoke yes, as he always speaks in English and learns many knowledge in English better than Malay language. So we move on to the next, which is code switching. Now, one of the main characteristics of bilingual communication is code switching between languages during a single discourse. Now, young dual language learners who are linguistically unbalanced extend the limited morphosyntactic expression in their weaker language by using the morphosyntactic structures of the stronger language. Now, as you can see in the fifth point, which is in diverse needs, it explains or asks that what do you do when you don't understand something in English? I actually interviewed him and he answered quite long, so I summarize it. And Ryan stated that if he does not understand or cannot elaborate in his L1, which is in his Malay language, he will use his L2. He will code switch into English language knowledge. So via translanguaging or code switching, now this also applies the same way. For an example, if he does not understand or cannot elaborate in his L2, therefore he will use his L1 to describe or extend the knowledge that he wants to tell. So now we have come up to the last content from my case study, which is the fourth point of the learning context of language learning. Now, since cognitive psychology focuses on efficient information processing and the connection between learning strategies and learners' mental processing, it has been used to find mechanisms, activities, and behaviors that could aid learners in achieving learning attainment. Now, in order for me to elaborate more on what I have just said, you can see at the left side of the slide, it is a green colored table elaborating on what I have just said. Now, I do ask the child, do you remember things better when you see pictures or listening to songs or doing certain activities? And I ask why as well. So, from this question, I gained that the child is more to visual learner, as he stated, that he understands things better when seeing things visually. And there will be times, especially in language acquisition, listening to songs actually will help him develop memory retention as through songs. It helped him memorize certain pronunciation. And when we talk about language styles, we're also relating with the children's motivation to learn. So I do ask the child, what do you get when you learn English? And what kind of rewards or praises did he get? So the child is also extrinsic and intrinsic, where when the child succeeded in learning English, he will get praises from his family members. And for educational field, from his school, The school will give him awards for his achievements in English, which he stated that he got the highest mark for his English examination in his school. So he got an award. And extrinsically, some of his family members will give materialistic rewards such as money or new telephones, a new gaming console, and such. So we have come up to the end of the case study analysis. Now, to summarize everything, so this case study underscores that bilingualism and multilingualism significantly influence a child's language learning, which by shaping their cognitive processes, their social experiences, and even their learning motivations. The child's case, it reflects how a supportive environment, diverse language exposure, and even personalized learning strategies has contributed to successful bilingual development. Now, through these findings, it highlighted the importance of fostering both home and social environment that encourage multilingual communication to enhance overall linguistic and cognitive growth in the children. Now, that will be all for my case study analysis regarding for the oral presentation. So, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and thank you for listening. Until we meet again.